Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda. I'm the creative director here at Studio D. I know you're not used to seeing my face. It's usually Kate. But I mean, we're kind of switching it up a little bit here. I'm going to be interviewing the lovely Joan about our kind of moving digital and how you kind of came about doing that. So if anyone doesn't know, Studio D as a multidisciplinary clinic, we've got multiple types of practitioners that work collaboratively towards your health and wellness goals. If you have any more questions about that, I'm going to do it right because Kate always goes this side, but actually the link is going to be here in the video. Not here, Kate, here, if you have any other questions about what Studio D is really about and our pillars and that kind of stuff. Kate kind of started us off this week with answering some questions about digital appointments. And I think this is why it works so well to talk to you, Joan, about kind of your experience being online full time. Like, you didn't make the move of seeing Kate as your practitioner in person, but rather started with her online. Now that came through what we had going over the summer, the pilot program, where we kind of did fully online, fully in person, and a hybrid. So why was the fully online, the digital, most appealing to you? Because that was the group that you were a part of.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think, well, because I live in a small town, so I'm not in Calgary or a big city. And it came to me at a really good time. So I found out about the pilot and was really interested for a couple of reasons. When I came into that, having a 6-week, twice a week chunk of time made it really easy to step in and go, okay, well, I could try this for 6 weeks and see what it would be like. So the commitment was nice. And I think I was just I was interested in the broad perspective of working with multiple practitioners and the broadness of the Studio D kind of philosophy of whole life. And for me, I was coming at it from a place of having, I'm a fairly active person, and I had been working out at a gym for about 1.5 years, and then COVID happened, and so the gym closed down. And then I got shingles, and so I was really sick for about 6 weeks, where I couldn't do much at all. So I felt like my fitness and my wellness kind of did a humongous plummet in that time, with just, there was a bunch of things happening in my life, which is why I think I got shingles. And then the fatigue was so big, I just fell out of any routine, and I was feeling pretty bummed out and not quite sure how to re-enter being active. And then I've got a little bit of arthritis in my knees, and I got some inflammation really stuck in there that was also kind of debilitating. So I just kind of felt like I was swimming upstream and not quite sure how to get my momentum going again. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to see if working with a multitude of people would really help me address some of that.
Right. And that's so interesting too. Like, it was such a weird time. And that was kind of why we started with the pilot program was, people are trying to move online without having to done that before, not really understanding what it was. So, I mean, yeah, I understand that moving from, you were active for the 1.5 years and like all of this stuff happening, like the ability to be online, I think was crucial in that point. Like you said, not being in the same city as your practitioner. So I guess your goals and concerns that you're kind of addressing with the program itself was getting back on track, in a sense of
they were
getting out there.
Well, there was I think that's where this platform really worked well for someone like me, because there were multiple things I needed to pay attention to at the same time. So I wanted, and my goals were very lifestyle, that whole lifestyle management piece of wanting to age well. I'm in my mid-50s and I really want to age well, and you start feeling aging in a different way. And I had this sort of injury, like I've had some knee stuff for my whole life. And so I know that's an area that's problematic. And so it was interesting because working out at this gym for a while, I really felt like I improved my strength. But when I got out of it, there was no entry point back in, because I feel like there's one single, like you got to be strong enough to start doing those classes. And so having it much more tailored for my injury was really good. So when I came in, it was really cool because we did the intake with the pilot, and we sort of had a long conversation about my history. So there was lots of different avenues that were sort of part of the story that I got to tell about myself, which I think is kind of unique sometimes. And then we could address a few things all at the same time in the pilot. So, I worked with the nutritionist on some, just dietary stuff that I kind of knew, but it's really good to revisit and hear it again in a different voice and a different focus. And then also ask about, how can I control inflammation through my diet and my food? So that was one piece of the inflammation. And then working with the athletic therapist on some really specific, how can we get that inflammation out of your knee? And, nobody had ever talked about that with me before, how you get inflammation out when it's stuck. And so that was really helpful. And then working on a strength routine as well to sort of build up from where I was after this kind of depleted time for me.
Right. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest questions we kind of heard last week and this week was, would working with someone online, does that actually do anything? Would that help me move forward? And like you went, like your whole experience at that point was without manual manipulation, without,
Right.
hands-on work. And I think that's fascinating that you say, no one ever brought up how to remove inflammation, how to, pull this problem out as opposed to just
Yeah.
like helping with it.
Yeah.
I mean, had you done anything digital before that? Was this your first experience? Had you only done like in person?
And not in terms of therapy. Like, of course, I've played around with a few fitness apps and,
Mhm.
yoga classes, that kind of stuff. But going into the pilot, I really looked at it as a short-term thing. Like I need a kick in the butt to get myself going again. Here's 6 weeks. And then when the pilot was over, that was one of the things that surprised me the most, is that I wanted to carry on and am still working with Studio D because it's got a lot of things that really work for me. And the digital piece really works for lots and lots of reasons. But the surprising reasons to me are the kind of detailed attention that you can get digitally that I didn't really get. Like once I was doing a sort of online thing where there was an exercise and I was working with the athletic therapist, Kate, and she sort of looked in the screen and goes, are you activating your TAs? And I was like, I don't know. And then she cued me and then I activated my TAs and she went, oh yeah, there it is. And I was like, how can you see that through a digital platform? But that was really cool. I didn't that was surprising to me that you could get so much guidance without the hands-on. But in hindsight, it's not actually that surprising because the only piece missing are the hands, the cueing, the visual, the relationship. Like to me, a lot of the lifestyle management stuff and working on my goals that are broader than strength, those relationships you have with practitioners is a big part of that to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's so funny that you say like, because again, any of us who see our practitioners online, it's that it's almost like you think that not that you're trying to get away with not doing it properly, but just like the detail, they're
Yeah.
like, oh wait, no, are
Yeah.
you my biggest thing that I'm always told or asked is, are you activating your glutes? No, probably not. Like if you're pointing it out on screen, I'm probably not doing it.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a really good point. Really, the only thing missing is the hands, the
Yeah.
the physical touch of it. But you're not missing anything else from it. And
Yeah.
it's this experience of you're still collaborating on your health journey. And I love how you say that it was going to be a short thing for you. You were
Yeah.
just going to do the 6 weeks and done. Like it was the kick in the
Yeah.
butt, going to move on from it. But then you stuck with it. So, I mean, you kind of already mentioned what those appointments kind of look like, what the structure was. You mentioned, you went through your history in detail, which again is a huge thing because you don't necessarily get that when you go to the gym or when you
Mhm.
see, one doctor at a time,
Yeah.
unless you're willing to play it out for every single person that you talk to, I guess. Um, so you talked about your goals where it was kind of that like kick in
Well,
the
and I just
butt, you
want to
want to get
go
back into
go
it.
back for a
Yeah.
second to something you just said was I have attended a clinic, a multidisciplinary clinic before, but it was like it was a roof with a lot of different practitioners under it, but
Right.
they worked in kind of silos. It was great that they were sort of they had everybody in
Oh,
one roof, but if you saw, one practitioner, then you would start a new plan with another practitioner, whereas here
right.
it's many eyes on the goals that I set up in that initial intake. So I think that is really unique to Studio D's model, is that, you set your goals with the sort of case manager, and then all eyes are on that, but from a different perspective. So the things that were really goals for me around the stuff I was talking about, to look at
Yeah.
it through a lens of a dietitian, it wasn't like I went to the dietitian and then I started a new set of conversations about my
Right.
history and my goals and everything with the next practitioner. It was all eyes on the same, which makes so much sense.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like it was one time of giving your history, one time of talking about your goals, and then that expansion from that was no more work for you, was no more effort out of you. Like
Yeah.
you've already shown your commitment. So why like rehash it every single time? And I feel like did you feel like because of how that's kind of set up, your plan, your journey, when that was laid out, was it easier to follow? Like, was it like this more collaborative? Hey, so this is how I think we should go. How did you
Yeah.
feel about that?
Well, I think one thing I really like is that because I'm still on that journey, is the sort of initial planning, but then it's sort of rolling out as I go on and what I need. So, I was thinking back in thinking about this conversation we're having, that, when I went from the pilot that was 2 days a week for 6 weeks, and I thought that's a lot of time with not much time in between. But
Hmm.
in hindsight, that was really helpful because it just kept things really flowing, and it gave me a chance to see multiple practitioners. And then when I sort of transitioned from the pilot into just a more regular program, it's like I am driving the bus, but with those people guiding me. So it was like at one point we went for a couple of weeks between sessions because, that made sense in what we were doing. And then right now I kind of need some accountability. So I was like, you know what? I need to make my next appointment in like 4 workouts, because that will keep me motivated to make sure I do that before, because I know we're meeting again and you're going to ask me about it. So it's really individualized as you go along. And I like that too, that it's just very organic and really flexible in responding to. And that's another thing with the multiple practitioners. It's like I feel like this is responsive, and when I get to a certain point, then there will be this, well, why don't we pull this person in to ask them about this part of what you're talking about? So, it really
Right.
becomes a collaborative group helping you to move forward.
Well, were you expecting that when you kind of started that like
I don't
collaboration?
know.
That
I guess that was one thing that drew me to it, because I've
yeah,
always thought, why aren't people working together on stuff more authentically? So I think it's more surprising when you see it in action too, because it's just
right.
different than what we're used to, you know.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think it's more efficient, honestly.
Yeah.
Just
The other
everyone
thing I
working together.
really the other thing I really noticed is sometimes I worked with I guess a personal trainer for a little bit once, where it was really top down. It was like,
Mm.
I'm going to have you do this, and I'm going to have you do this. And I really love that with Studio D. It is, there's a real message of taking responsibility for your own health and wellness, with support and guidance and what you need on the sides, but you've got to, you know, there's no leaning on somebody, having them pull you along. And for me, I really need, that's a really good thing for me, to be sort of like, you've got this, you can do this, here's how you do this, but step up. So yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
given that sense of responsibility for your own journey,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I mean, sometimes I wish that my AT could
Yeah,
come over
I
and
know.
pull me out of bed to make me do it. But
Yeah,
yes, having that
yeah.
responsibility, I mean, that's how you take control. That's how
And that's
you
right.
continue
That's
it.
right. That's where I think the changes I'm seeing too are slower and longer term than maybe I've experienced before, because I think
Mhm.
the learning about myself and the strengths I'm developing are sort of across my life. Like that mindset piece is really, really big and crucial for me. And nobody's really woven that in with all the other pieces you're working on. Often things are segmented out. And so I just feel like I'm learning patience, because I do want this to be very authentic and long term, working towards my goal. I'm not really into that sort of, I'm far enough along in my life that I know those quick fixes don't work. So
The 28-day plans.
I know exactly. Although it's so tempting sometimes when you see that stuff and you go, really, in 30 days I could be there. But
Yeah,
I do think I think that looking at the whole thing, and that's where I love the pillars. Like I went
right.
back and rewatched some of Studio D's videos when I was thinking about what are those 4 pillars. And it is really cool, that lifestyle management piece. I think there's a lot of people, and especially my age, who are looking for that piece as well. Like, how do I age well? How do I overcome some of um, the self-talk that is not helpful?
Yeah.
How do I define and recognize success for myself? Like when I was working with Kate on some mind stuff, I had gone away camping for the weekend, and with some really specific goals for myself. And then I had a session with her when I got back, and she said, how'd it go? And I said, I really didn't do so well this weekend. And she said, okay, tell me about that. And then when I listed what had happened, it was like she just saw me, helped me see it in a different way. Because I ate the chips, I didn't work out as much as I wanted. But what I was really saying was I counted the chips and didn't go back for seconds. And I did do the yoga workout. I just didn't do it as hard as I thought I would. So it was like I wasn't recognizing any of the accomplishments I had done and any of the habits that I was building. And
Mm-hmm.
so part of my sort of redefining my mindset is, being able to recognize those successes and that growth forward that you have without pegging it on some sort of perception of perfection. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's a tough one for a lot of people, is that mindset, and to change that. And I think that's really powerful that, Kate helped you through that. And I mean, you kind of already touched on what that month of the pilot program was for you, and taking what you learned and were working on and applying that moving forward. I mean, did you notice much of a change after the pilot program was done and you could kind of get into more of a, well, I guess less of a structured, more of a your
Yeah.
responsibility kind of setup? Like, how was that for
Yeah.
you?
Because I think we got through like the pilot, because it was 6 weeks and twice a week. We really pushed through on some things that got me kickstarted again. So,
Mhm.
talking to the dietitian really helped me get back some of those things in terms of, foods that might cause inflammation, looking at my salt intake, looking at portion size, just doing a bit of a reset. And then that, of course, feeds into making you feel better about yourself and remembering to drink enough water in a day and all that stuff. And then getting the inflammation out of my knee was actually huge, because I was thinking, I'm not, this never, I'm just going to be moving into a different age in my body. And again, that was all done hands off. So we did some contrast bathing, and I was taught how to sort of use my own hands to move that inflammation. And yeah, it was quite cool and very directive. Like I for, gosh, probably 6 weeks, I was getting my bike on my car, because I live in a mountain town that's very much on a hill, going down to the lake and riding on the flat back and forth, which I would never have done before because it was really boring. But it was all about pumping the inflammation out of my knees. And I only had to do that for like whatever, a month. And that was just all part of the multiple ways that we looked at that inflammation. And then when the pilot was over, then I was ready to get back into, now how do I get my strength back? And so now, this many months later, you know, we've got 3 different workouts that are sort of tailored to my particular needs in terms of strength. And then the other thing I don't think I've said yet that was really key for me was this whole idea of creating a toolbox for yourself. And, you know, I've used that language before, create a toolbox, but I hadn't really thought about it as that you've got a toolbox of stuff, and that sometimes you need to use different tools. So for me, now I have a toolbox of, when I have inflammation in my knee joints, what are the tools I can pull out instead of being derailed and stop being active in those tough times. Now I just shifted. I don't feel that kind of sense of, oh, I'm derailed, I'm out of my routine, I'm going to have to start all over again. It's just, oh, I've got some inflammation. Here's what I need to do to get through this piece and move on.
I mean, that's great. Like, I'm so happy that you touched on the toolbox, because I know that's a huge thing for a lot of people, me as well. Like, I injure myself or something doesn't feel right, so I don't continue. That's like a dead stop for anything else. So it's nice that you were able to kind of come up with these tools, these different toolboxes to move forward with. You know, my knee's bugging me, I'm going to do something like this. It doesn't completely derail you, which I think is part of that lifestyle management as well. It's part of the just like kind of going with the flow a little bit,
because you don't come to a screeching halt. You adjust, and everybody's got stuff in their life that comes their way and could derail you, or you could reach in your toolbox and shift your way a little bit.
I think that's great. I mean, adapting, using the toolbox, all of these kind of things, like, you've gotten, by the sounds of it, so much out of these online appointments, which is so funny because it's that systemic, you know, mind gap of, I'm not going to get much out of an online appointment. But here you are, all online, and you've done so well.
I think a lot of people look at the online stuff now as a response to COVID. Like, everything's gone online. Now we're all a lot more comfortable being online, and how do I operate online? But for me, I'm going, okay, this actually works as a first choice, because it's really adaptable to my life. It offers me stuff that I might not have access to. And it puts me in a clinic that has a sort of broader scope philosophy of, you know, what I really want for myself. And so I don't have to live in Calgary to access that. And so,
Well, I mean, as someone who does live in Calgary, I still wouldn't access it in person. It's much easier to do an online appointment sometimes.
And you don't have to deal with travel and parking and all that stuff. It's easier to fit into your life as well.
I find that there's less excuses to do it. It's funny because when you're in that mindset, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go to this physical space, whatever that looks like, that level of commitment that you need to walk out the door has to be quite high. So if you're not at that 80% motivation, then I probably won't do it. But now if you're able to get like 50 or 60% motivation, oh, it's easy. I'm going to turn my laptop on. Great. I'm going to sit down and talk with, you know, Studio D here today. I've got my appointments all scheduled out and whatnot. I think that's my personal biggest plus as someone who also uses online appointments. So with that though, like, the biggest barriers then? Like if this is an easier way to do it and you get as much out of it, what in your words do you think would be the biggest barriers for people moving to online
I
appointments?
think understanding that it has a lot to offer as a first choice, because
Hmm.
I think a lot of people look at it as a default, or as a, I can't do this, so I'll do something digital or online. So I
Hmm.
think understanding that it can be really responsive, and understanding that a practitioner can work with you not in person and be, equally as able to help you meet your
Hmm.
goals. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one, and it's funny because again, I'm on the team, and it's still that's still a barrier for me to be like, wait, you can help me online, but I need to see you in person, even though I started online. It's this, society has drilled it into us. Unless it's manual
Yeah.
therapy, it doesn't do it. But that's not the
Yeah.
case. Like you said, you're
Yeah.
given the toolbox. Now you can help. You're not reliant on
Well, in
seeing someone
manual
else.
therapy, like, you're making me realize that if we look at an injury and go, manual therapy is what I need, you
Hmm,
really narrow the scope of the strategies you can use to not just heal that injury, but prevent the next one, or
absolutely.
work on your broader goals. And so, yeah, when we go for manual therapy as the only strategy, it's really limiting.
I 100% agree as someone who relies heavily on person, in person and online. 100% agree. I like that scope being much wider. I guess, I mean, just to help with everyone watching, was there anything you weren't expecting from the digital appointments, whether that be, oh, it was kind of difficult because of this, or, oh, I really liked this part that you weren't expecting at all?
Well, I think I wasn't expecting to continue, because I was looking at it as I'll do this nice affordable pilot that, is intense and short, gets me kicked in the butt, and then I'll move on. So I wasn't expecting that digital would work for me long term. And I wasn't expecting the detail and attention to things in my rehab. I wasn't expecting to have that level of quality of care be able to be delivered. Um, and I think I was expecting, but I'm pleasantly surprised and happy with just the scope. So again, the scope is so key to me, because I just, my goals in terms of my own health and wellness are wide, and to be able to address that width is really, really great.
I mean, I think that's a great place to end it. Like it's such a nice little like bow on it. Like I absolutely agree. It's tough when you don't know what to expect and you can be pleasantly surprised as opposed to really disappointed. I think that's really strong, especially now. Like you mentioned earlier, a lot of people see, because of COVID, a lot of people see online as the only option. But I don't want people to take away from this lovely and very informative conversation that we've had, that this is your only option because of COVID, but rather this can be
Right.
your first option. This can be your
Yeah.
first choice because it's just as helpful, or if not more helpful and more um, accessible, I guess would be the
Yeah.
best way to put it. Like
And I
you're
think,
not stuck to your surroundings.
if people try it, they'll be pleasantly
Mhm.
surprised. Like, I think that's
I
the thing,
agree.
is jump in and try it and see, because I think people will be surprised. Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I think that's the perfect way to end it. So I'm going to say goodbye. Joan, thank you so
Thanks,
much
Amanda. It was
for
great to
doing this.
chat.
Yes. And to meet officially, I've seen your name and like, a little like, oh, I'm going to talk to Joan. Like, oh, this is great. So for our viewers, if you like what we were talking about, again, this is a series for this week. It's living on our channel. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can email us, you can comment. All of our info is in the bio here. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our channel, because that's a big one. Because again, this is a series. If you want to be notified, this is how you know. And yeah, I mean, questions, comments, concerns, hit us up. Like we're here for you guys. And I guess yeah, Joan, I mean, good luck on your journey. I'm so excited
Thanks.
to see where it takes you.
Thanks so much,
Awesome.
Amanda.
Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.